Hey, look what I have here, Rainbow, coming at you from Florida, and you are looking at a 2021 KTM 690 Duke, pretty much the same thing as a 2021, which it is a 2020, 2022. This is the SMC R. This is not the Enduro R, as you can tell. That is not the stock exhaust. Whoever purchased this, and this has less than 450 miles, put this like $1,200 exhaust system on it. I am not really thrilled about, but I think that's going to get changed by the new owner. This is, of course, a 690cc four-stroke. It comes in at, let's call it 73 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. And the foot-pounds, let's talk a little bit of torque. Well, when it comes time for torque, we are looking at 54 foot-pounds at about 6,500 RPM. All right, now because it's a single cylinder, it definitely has some power in the lower on in the RPM. This does have a 6-speed transmission, 1 down, 5 up, with a quick shifter, which is exciting as far as I am concerned. The height of the seat is 835 millimeters in inches. That is, the ground clearance on this puppy is about 192 millimeters. It carries 14 liters of fuel, which you put in right back here. And of course, with most manufacturers moving towards that 10,000 kilometer servicing interval, which is pretty darn good these days. But I'm gonna be honest with you, if you live in Florida, if you're in the heat all the time like this, I am going to highly suggest that you cut that interval in half. This does have a power assisted clutch, and it also has a slipper clutch, which means it's supposed to cut down or reduce or potentially eliminate wheel lockup if you inadvertently downshift, which is something that I have been known to do. It happens, folks. All right, this of course has the trellis frame. Wow, everybody likes that. All right, and the handlebars, pretty cool. 808 millimeter wide, and they are tapered bars, as you can see, and they are adjustable, of course. Now, this does have a bunch of rider aids. So let's start with the rider aids. Has an engine management EMS system. This does have 17-inch tires, okay? And I'm gonna go over some of the rider aids actually in a little bit. Let me finish more of the mechanics of the bike, all right? Front brake, it's just a single, and it's a 320 millimeter Brembo, which I'm not, it's okay. It's a very lightweight bike. It should be okay, but I find this particular bike to be a little lackluster on the front brakes. I think this one needs a little bit of an adjustment. In the rear, of course, it has a 240 millimeter Brembo, which is pretty standard on a lot of bikes. Front forks, guess what? They are adjustable. They are WP Apex 48 millimeters. Front has an adjustment for rebound and compression. And of course, the rear is also a WP Apex, and it is adjustable with preload only. Now the rider modes. Let's talk about what it has on here. It basically has 2 modes. It has a street mode, and it has a supermoto mode, because this really is that, it's considered a naked bike, but it really has that supermoto look. Now, in addition to street and supermoto mode, this bike does come with traction control, ABS, and it also has cornering ABS because it has a lean angle sensor. Now, all of this could be disengaged when you just want to go kind of balls out on this bike, but more importantly, specs are specs. Anyone can look up specs. Let's take it for a ride and see how this thing feels. Hey, Rainbow here, and a little bit of warning in advance. I bought brand new microphones, have a brand new setup, tested it out before I left to come down here, and I may have audio problems. So if I have audio problems with this bike, I'm going to have to overdub and just talk in the background separately. So I apologize if that happens. I'm warning you right now because I don't have the ability to run all the way home to try to figure stuff all out and come back again. So just giving you a little heads up, I may have to overdub this. Anyway, let's take this puppy for a ride. Well, let's get it on the road and see how it sounds. Okay. Goodbye, audio. Well, the first thing that you're going to notice about this KTM 690 SMC R, which is a real supermoto bike, is that it feels light. It feels extremely light, and at 147 kilograms dry, which is about 323 pounds, that is an extremely light bike. It just feels really tight and very light. I can't really say light often enough. Now, how is this bike? Very comfortable seating position as far as I'm concerned. Now, I have a 32-inch inseam. I am, or was, 5'11" and a half, which is about 181 centimeters. With the current setup, with the preload that's on that, I was actually able to flat foot this bike, but barely flat foot this bike. Now, I believe that when I rode its little or bigger cousin, or straightforward first cousin, the Husqvarna, the 700, that particular bike I felt was a little bit taller, and I don't believe I was able to flat foot with that bike. Now, this does have adjustable handlebars, but what came stock and how this was set up, it actually felt really good to me. I really liked the riding position. It felt very comfortable because you are definitely more upright. You're not really you're really not pushing forward until you get up on the highway and up at a bit of a higher speed. Then things seem to change a little bit. All right. Now, the acceleration in mode 1, which is, I think, street mode, it was fine. It was good. It was what you would expect from a 690cc single cylinder 4-stroke motorcycle. I was kind of happy with it. But what I was unprepared for was the significant difference when you go to super sport or supermoto mode, which is the second mode, mode 2. I thought that it was great for a 690cc motorcycle. Now, sure, I really loved the Ducati Hypermotard. It has a bigger engine, it has more power, but this bike feels great, and it's more than adequate in its class. It really is a fantastic bike. Now, the power delivery, I thought that the power delivery was very smooth, and that the power band, it was linear. I just didn't find any problems with this bike as far as it, petering out or having to get up to a certain RPM. It felt nice and consistent all the way through the power band. It doesn't feel choppy. It doesn't feel touchy. It just felt really good. Now, the amount of confidence that you have with this bike. First off, I don't ride one of these on a regular basis, but just for hopping on this bike with someone with a decent amount of experience riding motorcycles, it was very easy to get comfortable. Not like when you're on a bike, for 10, 15, 20,000 miles and you really get to know that bike. But for just hopping on it, especially knowing that I had a crutch with the traction control, the ABS, the cornering ABS, the wheelie control, knowing that all of that was in place gave me a little bit more confidence. And I didn't push it too much because it's not my bike. I don't want to wreck it. I thought it was under 450, but it's just under 500 miles. I actually turned the clock over 500 with this on the odometer. But I felt as though it was a very confidence, here's that word again, confidence inspiring bike. Okay, let's talk brakes. Very simple brakes. You have a Brembo in the front, a Brembo in the rear. They're both single, and They were adequate for the size of the bike and the weight of the bike. It worked. They worked fine. I still don't like the feel of the front brakes on this bike, and when I took out the Husqvarna 700, that Supermoto, the front brakes were horrible on that one, and I just felt as though that they just needed to be adjusted or something was wrong. They were just spongy. These aren't spongy, but when you're used to having dual discs on a heavier bike, you really feel the difference when you have a single. But I also had the same feeling when I had the Indian Scout Bobber and only had a single disc on front. However, I will tell you that when I did some emergency braking, it worked perfectly fine. Now the ABS did kick in a little bit. I had some skidding and some chirping, but it was very good. The braking was good, especially when I combine the front brake with the rear brake and you really get on it. I just don't like the setup because it just doesn't seem like it's very smooth and gradual with the brakes. And now this is twice having the same bike, essentially, the Husky 700 and then this KTM 690 SMC-R, and I have the exact same complaint about both of them, and that is the front brake just didn't seem to be as smooth as I would like it. Okay, highway, zero wind protection. Once you get up there into the higher levels of speed and you have a lot of wind, it's not expected on this bike. That's really not what this bike is. This bike is not designed to go on a 200-mile trip on the highway. That's just not what it's here for. However, when you lean forward, it seems to cut the wind really nicely. I have an AGV K6 helmet. It cut through the wind very easily, but I definitely had to lean forward once I hit about 100 miles an hour. You had to be leaning forward on this bike because there's this zero wind protection, but it's not designed for those kind of speeds for a sustained amount of times. I have no comments about the mirrors because this bike didn't have any mirrors on it, which I felt riding in traffic to be a problem. I was at intersections, stopped to the left or right of cars, and I kept finding myself looking behind. It was a little unnerving not being able to look behind you, changing in traffic, but it keeps your head on a swivel because you really have to turn around significantly. So, but the bottom line is I have no comments about the mirrors. Now, big difference between mode 1 and mode 2. I alluded to it earlier that I was kind of surprised at how much more powerful we were with mode 2. The wheelie control kicked in, it seemed like extremely early, and I could barely get the front wheel up in mode 1. Once I put it over to SuperMoto, which is the second mode, very easy to do, by the way, on your left hand with the control button, just hold it down. Can't have any throttle, however, at the same time, and it was amazing. I was able to sustain somewhat of a decent wheelie in mode 2, but only in first gear. That's the only one I tried it in. I did try a little bit in second gear, but I didn't want to have to clutch it. Now, when I say I was able to pop this up, I wasn't clutching it at all. This was just simply using the engine itself, going forward in first gear, and then just popping it up solely with throttle. But it really felt good, and I will tell you that the wheelie control, even though I have my wheelie control turned all the way down on my Multistrada, and I know these bikes aren't comparable, but wheelie control can be comparable, that this Ducati wheelie control, or the KTM for this particular 690 Duke, was a little more liberal, was a little more forgiving, and kind of allowed you to get that front end up a little higher and a little bit longer. So overall, it's a great bike. It really is a great bike for $12,500 US this current year. I think it's a great bike. It might be on a higher end of the costs in its class, but you know, then again, Ducati kind of blows past that. What's going to be significantly cheaper is going to be, you know, the MT-07, which would be another comparison. This is a big time hooligan bike. It's just loads of fun. It's great for commute, not great for long trips because of the wind issues like I talked about. It's just a wonderful, lightweight, exciting bike to ride. And that's pretty much it. So this is Rainbow. I hope you liked this. If you did, please like, please subscribe. I would absolutely appreciate that, and have yourself a great day.